Now, I know some of you may be wondering why we have this drained look on our faces. We just witnessed something that was just so atrocious, so horrible, that it literally made it made me just... It made me regret it made me regret waking up this morning. If I'd have known I had to go through that, I wouldn't have woke up today. But we're done with that, and now we're moving on to something else. Nick, you remember back in the day when anime didn't have so good of dubs, right? The dubs were done really cheap. They didn't like respect the source material, and in a lot of ways they just changed up the story to fit what they thought was best.
Oh wait, they still do that.
Oh, that's right. They do, except in a different direction. 4Kids. The anime dubbing, like, just monster that was responsible for some of the worst dubs ever. And at the same time, they had so much going for them, and they messed it up. They messed up everything. Ugh. So, what ruined 4Kids? The Fall of an Anime Empire. This one is by the one and only SaberSpark. It's been a minute since we've watched a SaberSpark video. Last one we did, I believe, was the Sony Animations one. So, yeah. I don't know what to say about this except for just, please be gentle. Please don't break our brains with bullshit, because we've already been through that tonight. And if you want to know what that was that broke us mentally, I don't want to subject you to it, but I'll just say this. The pain. The pain. Ugh.
Anyway.
Anywho, let's go ahead and get into this. This is What Ruined 4Kids, Fall of the Anime Empire, by the one and only SaberSpark. Here we go.
This video is brought to you by Factor.
Prepare yourself, Yugi, for you are about to face the wrath of the greatest duelist who has ever lived. Bring it on, Kaiba. Let's duel. For my first brilliant move, I summon my...
Hold up. Sorry, guys. Gotta hit the pause button here. Hi, yes, I'm a representative from the censorship department at 4Kids, and it is my duty to make sure that nothing gets past the censors that might upset or endanger the viewers in our audience. So, yeah, the previous scene with the Sharpie on your hands, we're gonna cover that up. Don't want the kids playing with markers that could potentially cause irritation to their skin. All right, perfect.
Fuck you, Armstrong.
No more from me. Have fun with your Pokemon cards.
What's a Pokemon? Behold, Yugi, my most powerful card. I summon my Blue Eyes White Dragon. With this card, you don't stand a chance.
Hold up.
Oh my god, what is it now?
I love the fact that they're using the abridged voices.
Like, I was starting to say, I was like, are they doing abridged, or is it just that I got so used to the abridged that I can't tell the difference between abridged and the 4Kids dub now?
Well, here's the thing. The abridged version actually had effort put into it a lot of the times. Oh.
Small thing, I promise. So, I just spoke to corporate and yeah, those cards of yours, those edges are a bit sharp and might lead to some nasty paper cuts, so yeah, we're gonna have to censor the cards.
So our show about dueling with monster cards won't feature any cards?
Yes. 4Kids Entertainment, a name that strikes both sentimental memory and fear into the hearts of aging weeaboo millennials. For many American kids back in the 2000s, 4Kids was their first introduction to anime, with shows like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and One Piece. 4Kids would acquire, license, and dub these Japanese shows into English, and by doing so, unlocked an explosive demographic that could not get enough. Hell, I was there, Gandalf. I was there when this happened. I was a dumb little kid at the time, sprinting home off the bus so I could catch the next episode of Pokemon.
For me, it was Toonami.
Same.
Because Toonami actually was being done by Funimation.
Like, I watched a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! On 4Kids, as well as a bit of Pokemon.
Yeah.
But, like, Toonami was where I first saw anime and started getting into it.
Yeah. Toonami was where, you know, we got Dragon Ball Z, Gundam Wing, Tenchi Muyo, Outlaw Star. Holy crap. Just a litany of just amazing anime. And this was like for kids, you know, this was more kid oriented, so I can understand. But then I remember when Toonami basically swapped spots with Maguzi because they were trying to hit that kid demographic, and it just fell flat on its face.
Butterfree leave Ash? I had to know. I was obsessed. And so was virtually every other kid around me. Though there were some side effects to the success of 4Kids localization. For example, I'm not proud to say that when my father took me to a sushi place as a kid, I asked the chef there for a jelly donut while pointing at a rice ball.
These donuts are great.
Yep, that was a real thing. What is wrong with rice balls? What is wrong with saying rice balls? Why is that such a thing?
I don't know if it was wrong or if the people doing the dub were just that stupid.
No, I think it's because the censors literally like, nope, can't say balls. Why not?
That's absurd.
I know. It's like they allowed them to say Pokeball, but not rice ball.
That doesn't make any sense.
Jelly
It can't
filled
be
my
that.
favorite.
Huh?
It can't be that.
Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
There's no denying that 4Kids was instrumental to the rise and popularity of anime in America. It was so successful that the company itself was even listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Hell, what's more American than that? Well, I guess the 4Kids national anthem might.
For the ramparts we watched.
Oh, God.
So gallantly streaming.
And the rocket's red glare.
But today, 4Kids is a defunct company and a distant memory. In 2017,
I stopped watching before One Piece was ever on there, too.
I saw like the first little bit of One Piece, and honestly, I was annoyed. I was annoyed with like the dub. I knew that this was like not good at all.
company closed its doors, and they have remained shut ever since. So, what happened? How did this powerhouse of a company that essentially had a monopoly over network anime licensing go under? Was it due to 4Kids needlessly censoring Japanese shows for American audiences? Was it due to poor leadership at 4Kids? Or perhaps something else? I mean, what banished 4Kids to the Shadow Realm? Well, let's find out.
Markiplier.
Now, before
It
we
was
discuss
Markiplier.
what ruined 4Kids, we need to talk about what made it so special in the first place. The events and decisions that led to its meteoric rise and then
That was my
fall.
chair.
Well, it starts all
What happened?
Made a sound and moved.
Does everything still work?
Strange.
I don't know. That's weird.
the way back in 1970 with a company that was the predecessor of 4Kids, Leisure Concept Inc., or LCI. It was created by Mike Germankane and Stan Weston and was based out of New York City. Originally, LCI had nothing to do with localizing anime, and instead focused on licensing existing properties and pitching original children's show concepts along with toy lines with said shows. Weston was the creator of G.I. Joe, so this market was familiar territory for him. The company would secure a handful of high-profile licenses throughout the 80s, from Nintendo properties like The Legend of Zelda to superheroes such as The Incredible Hulk and film franchises like James Bond. But one of LCI's biggest wins was brought to Weston's attention by a colleague named Ted Wolfe, a concept for a fantasy show starring cat-like superheroes. Using his industry connections, he was able to pitch the show concept to Renegades, which LCI had a good relationship with. They saw potential in the show pitch and signed a deal with LCI to develop the new cartoon, Thundercats.
Yeah.
Rankin Bass and its parent company, Lorimar Telepictures Corp., would handle production of the actual cartoon itself, while LCI handled the concepts for the show. Joe McCain in particular would design almost all of the characters and location concepts for Thundercats, before handing the designs off to Rankin Bass, who ultimately farmed out the animation to Japanese studio Pacific Animation Corporation to take the designs and make a cartoon with them. Thundercats was a massive hit, running for 4 seasons and becoming a staple of 1980s pop culture. In the early 90s, LCI shifted gears and began licensing animation from overseas to dub it for a Western audience through a new subsidiary called 4Kids Productions. Also, in 1990, LCI got a new CEO, a person whose name sends a chill down the spine of gamers everywhere, Bobby Kotick.
Yep. I bet you didn't know that. Oh, I knew it as soon as they brought up the CEO. I'm like, are they going to talk about him? Yep. And there he is, the Bobby Cockblock himself.
He purchased a controlling stake in the company's shares and would keep the title for a year until selling his share of the company to move on and become CEO of Activision, where he remains to this very day.
Until recently. Thank God. Although they did have to pay a hefty price to get him out of the CEO chair, which...
He still stayed there way longer than he should have after being outed as a fucking sex offender.
Yeah.
Khan would replace Kotick as CEO. And in 1995, the company would rebrand from LCI to 4Kids Entertainment, Inc. By 2000, 4Kids was doing incredibly well. Due to the explosive success of an anime property, the company decided to localize. A little show you might have heard of, I don't know. It's called Pokemon. I know that basically everyone and their mother knows about Pokemon, but it was truly next level back in the late 90s and early 2000s. The frenzy took the world by storm, and it propelled 4Kids to massive profits. So much so that 4Kids was big enough to IPO and was listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2000, becoming one of the top 100 fastest growing companies of that year. By 2002, Pokemon alone had generated $140 million in revenue for the company. And in 2001, they acquired a 3% stake in the Pokemon company itself, so they could benefit from the massive merchandising arm of the brand. They would also continue doubling down on the anime dubbing formula, adapting popular shonen jump titles such as One Piece and Shaman King. But their second largest success was, without a doubt, Yu-Gi-Oh!, securing both the localization and merchandising rights to it in the entire West. While not as all-encompassing as Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Again was a massive hit for the company, running alongside Pokemon on Kids WB from 2001 to 2006.
I'm the
Just like
motherfucking
Pokemon, I too was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! And bought all of the trading cards. Hell, it was the first card game I ever played.
Thing about the game back then versus the game now, a lot of those cards that were available back then are banned.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
And I wasted all the money I had on it. Just all of it was gone. But hey, at least I was a good player.
Activate. 3 blasting the ruin.
That wasn't all for the company, though. At the time, the biggest
Exodia.
rival to Kids WB cartoon block was
The reason I
arguably
quit
Fox
playing
Kids,
Yu-Gi-Oh! Is because
which-
they banned everything that was remotely decent.
Yeah. Pot
So
of
moved to
Greed.
Magic the Gathering where they didn't do that.
Yeah.
would often
So
try
with Magic the
and match
Gathering,
W-
it took them too long to ban things that were incredibly overpowered.
There you go.
WB's programming with similar shows of its own. Pokemon on Kids WB was countered with Digimon on Fox. Max Steel on Kids WB, Action Man on Fox Kids. Batman Beyond on Kids WB, Spider-Man Unlimited on Fox Kids. The two blocks traded blows throughout the late 90s and early 2000s. But eventually, Fox Kids as a block folded, as it was gobbled up by Disney. And in its
Yeah.
place came Foxbox, a new kids block run entirely by 4Kids that launched in September of 2002 via a 4-year, $100 million deal with Fox, earning 4Kids all the advertising revenue earned during the block. The block itself would eventually be rebranded to 4Kids TV in 2005. A few years later, in 2008, Warner Brothers ended their Kids WB block, and 4Kids picked up all of the slots on their network. Combined with their block on Fox, they now had 9 hours of programming across 2 networks that historically had traded blows with one another. 4Kids now essentially had a monopoly on their little niche of dumbed-down Japanese imports.
Except for Toonami. Everyone always forgets Toonami during this time.
Maybe Toonami is going to be the reason.
Well, I guess,
Maybe
but
Toonami ruined 4Kids because they actually put out better product overall.
let's see. When did Toonami? I forget when Toonami originally went off the air. Yeah, the original programming block of Toonami, 2008. So it ran from 97 to 2008. And I remember seeing the last broadcast for this, and it just it broke my heart.
So I'm pretty sure I stopped watching 4Kids stuff before it ever switched over to being just 4Kids, I was watching it when it was still on the Kids WB stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't recall ever watching Fox Box.
I remember watching Jetix. I remember watching.
I watched that.
It was basically. It did a lot of Digimon, and the shows from that era. It was pretty good. It had some interesting stuff, or Metabots was another one. But then of course I basically graduated into
Digimon was on something that wasn't that at some point, and I watched it there. I think it was on Fox Kids for a while.
It was.
So I think that's where I actually watched Digimon.
Yeah. Let's see.
And ruled its portion of American television with an iron censored fist. At this point in 4Kids history, they are at the top of their game and feasting like kings. But they would be eating better if they had Factor. A jelly donut. Sure, Brock, whatever you say. So, part of my goals this year is to eat at home more often and try to avoid those expensive takeout options. But that can be challenging with my schedule. I want lunch right now. But I don't want to have to spend time prepping it, making it. It's too time consuming. But that's where Factor comes to the rescue. I run downstairs on all fours for some reason. I turn on the oven. I toss in my meal in 7 to 10 minutes. A quick and tasty lunch that is also keto friendly. Yeah, it puts the pro and protein. Boom. I'm just being super cringy today, aren't I? My latest meal from Factor was the jalapeno popper burger, and it was wonderful. I ate that in a few minutes. It was gone like that. I snapped my fingers. We couldn't hear that. Yes, editor, put that in the video. Factor also sent me some wonderful smoothies. My friends love them. Again, I'm trying to keto, so they look tasty. I've had them before on my off keto days, but I'm trying to keep with it, and they're just tempting me in the fridge. Look at them, sons of guns. Another thing I really appreciate is how Factor is fresh and never frozen. I mean, hey, you can put them in the freezer if you want, but I say put them in the fridge and have them on standby. Super easy meals that are easy to access and locked and loaded for my busy work week. Oh, and they're also easy for logging my calories and hitting my daily macros. So head to factor75.com or click the link down below and use code SaberSpark60 to get 60% off your first Factor box. Do it now before Brock forces a quote-unquote jelly donut down your throat. Ew, it's all ricey. No, seriously, what was that about? Come on, 4Kids. I think we know what a rice ball is.
It's a giant sandwich.
What the hell is even that?
Around the same time, when 4Kids was continuing its glorious march of global jelly donut domination, cracks in the armor were starting to form, and the company made a lot
I
of poor
actually
decisions.
didn't know what a rice ball was whenever I saw that originally, so...
Really?
Maybe that was their whole thing. Maybe they just figured American kids likely didn't know what the hell a rice ball was, so they would just confuse them if they left it in.
Why? Why not just tell them, hey, this is a rice... Why? As a matter of fact, you could have included, a cultural thing, being this, if you're wondering what this is, it's a rice ball. In Japan, they are very popular, and they often include a bunch of different fillings, whether that be sushi, whether that be steamed, steamed, What was it?
Maybe it was they were expecting, Mom, I want a rice ball now. What? You want a ball of rice? What the fuck? Like,
well, yeah, but
my mom would have been like, why do you want a ball of rice? Be like, I want a rice ball. And then she probably would have been like, okay, and made me like regular rice and smooshed it together and gave it to me. I would have been like, this kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, you have to season the rice, and not only that, but the filling makes a world of difference.
It has to be like sticky rice.
Yes.
Mom also probably would have been like, I can make you a bowl of rice.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I would have been like, oh, I need a bowl. And she'd be like, I don't know what that means. So maybe that's why they did it, is they wanted to try to avoid that situation with kids, like being like, hey, I want a rice bowl. We live in America, honey. Like, we're not Japanese. I can't just get you a rice bowl.
Just remember that scene
Japanese restaurants weren't like super popular yet here either.
I just remember that scene from South Park. It's like, welcome what the door, Garrison-san. It's not Garrison-san, damn it, you're in America.
Damn it.
That began to sow the seeds of their downfall. The first and arguably biggest mistake they made was 4Kids selling its 3% stake in the Pokemon Company in October of 2005 for what seems like a paltry $960,000.
What? What? Okay, hold on. How much is the Pokemon Company worth right now? How much is the Pokemon Company worth? There it is. Pokemon Company right now sits at about $15 billion. So, right off the top of your heads, everybody, what is 3% of 15 billion? $45 million. Jesus.
$450 million.
Oh, sorry, $450 million. I miscalculated that. God, that is insane. Oh.
So they took like
pennies.
Less than $1 million when they could have had like something worth basically $450 million.
That's yeah.
Yep, that's a goof.
Or at least when you compare that number to the well over $100 million they made off the property. 2 months later in December, they chose not to renew their licensing agreement to dub the show. And the Pokemon Company would start handling the international distribution of the anime internally starting in 2006. It seems like a staggeringly stupid decision to let go of an IP as powerful as Pokemon. But we have the benefit of hindsight here for perspective.
When you went and bought Pokemon episodes on VHS, were they a different dub from the 4Kids dub?
No.
So you actually got the 4Kids dub on VHS back then?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it wasn't until 2006. By 2006, I was like in high school and I wasn't watching Pokemon anymore. When I watched Pokemon, I was like in my like preteen and like early teenage years.
So I know I got a hold of a couple of Pokemon episodes on VHS at one point. And I was just wondering, I was like, were those the better versions? Like, were they actually dubbed in some way that wasn't the 4Kids version? Or was that still the same
well, they've gone back and they've redubbed a lot of the old ones. They have. And I don't know if that's a thing that...
If I was going to watch Pokemon nowadays, I'd probably just watch it subbed.
Probably the same.
I probably never will, though, because there's way too much of it at this point.
Yes.
If I'm going to do anything, I'm going to be like, I'm going to go back and watch, like, the original, like, first couple seasons, like, run through, like, what would be the equivalent of, like, Red and Blue.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to quit watching.
Pokemon Fever, which was something truly unrivaled by any other media presence ever experienced.
Hurry, it's spreading!
Squirtle.
Hey, God, 2! This is the 20th case of Pokemon Fever this week!
It's unstoppable!
It was cooling off in the mid-2000s. So perhaps the 4Kids execs assumed that this fad was dying down. And between the rise of Yu-Gi-Oh! And their new block on Fox, They thought that they were already in a good position moving forward, not realizing at the time that Pokemon is a franchise seemingly unable to die. Like seriously, this IP will outlast the heat death of the universe. Other business decisions would eventually impact the company. For example, 4Kids would try to move beyond children's media with a new subsidiary called Foresight Licensing Solutions, which was aimed at a teen and adult market. They also launched a trading card company called TC Digital Games LLC, and an online multi-platform video game company called TC Websites in December of 2006. They were billed as a
I remember
massive
seeing those
expansion to the
chaotic
company's
cards, but I never had any clue what they were.
I was never interested in them.
business model. In 2010, both were shut down and were sound failures. Only a year after clinching both Fox and WB's children's block, Foxbox would shut down in 2008. And later that year, 4Kids would lay off 15% of its workforce due to the struggling economic conditions of 2008. I mean, it was kind of bad timing for them to have these issues during that era, considering that 2008 was like the midst of a financial meltdown across the world and probably hastened to the fall of 4Kids as a company.
The housing
Other
crisis,
issues,
yeah.
such as pausing of common stock trading and a shuffling of CEOs, would only continue to batter the company. But it was in 2011 where things got really ugly for 4Kids. While Yu-Gi-Oh! Was their most profitable license after losing Pokemon, unfortunately, they just weren't making that much money from airing the anime alone. They had to make other deals with Funimation, another anime localization company, to create home videos of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Majesco, a game studio, that made versions of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime playable on the Game Boy Advance. Well, let's just say the IP owners of Yu-Gi-Oh!, TV Tokyo and Nihon Ad Systems, both decided that 4Kids was way out of line for making their own deals for the franchise, citing that 4Kids owed them a portion of the royalties from those agreements using the franchise, and that also, by making the deals without their permission, that these companies get to keep all of the royalties for themselves, and that 4Kids had broken the terms of the licensing contract that they had with Yu-Gi-Oh!'s Japanese overlords. All in all, it looks pretty bad for 4Kids.
They
And
goofed
you know what these
really
Japanese
bad
companies
yet
did?
again.
Yes, they did.
They sued 4Kids. They sued them in 2011 for $5 million in damages for underpayments, wrongful deductions, and unmet obligations. As a result of the lawsuit, 4Kids' license to Yu-Gi-Oh! Was revoked by TV Tokyo, and 4Kids filed for bankruptcy. At the time, it seemed like that was the end for 4Kids as a company. Or was it?
I activate the magic card, Monster Reborn!
Apparently, the Japanese companies pulling the license as quickly as they did also violated the terms of the contract on TV Tokyo's end, and more legal shenanigans occurred as 4Kids fought back to keep their hands on the golden goose, and they countersued. Eventually, the court actually sided with 4Kids, saying that using outside companies to distribute home videos was a normal practice, and not a violation of the initial license 4Kids made with TV Tokyo. 4Kids actually came out ahead in the lawsuit, being awarded $8 million at the end of the day. The company's fortunes seemed to be swinging back in their favor, going from staring down bankruptcy to a massive cash infusion. But unfortunately for 4Kids, the good times would not last. 4Kids eventually sold off its licenses to other companies in 2012 and shut down most of its other businesses due to a lack of profitability. The company rebranded that same year to 4 Licensing Corporation, but barely made any waves. And in 2016, 4Kids filed for bankruptcy and immediately ceased operations once it was finalized the next year. And so, the once entertainment giant that had brought both Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! To the States, that opened the hearts and minds of millions of American kids to the world of anime, died with a whimper, and barely anyone noticed or cared. Of course, that lack of notice or care was primarily because culturally, the landscape for anime and manga was changing rapidly by the mid-2000s through the early 2010s. Also, 4Kids had to deal with the rise of the internet, democratizing access to anime and manga via illegal piracy, and showing 90s kids who grew up on censored shows, dumbed down to be in line with the tone of American cartoons, that anime itself actually had a bit more of a bite to it.
Yeah, that...
Was that the bite of 87?
Shut up!
Even legally.
That was a harsh scene from that version of the Pokemon anime.
Never saw that.
Yeah, it's basically a retelling, but without Ash, but instead with like a more generic fill-in for like Red from the original Pokemon. And it actually is pretty epic, if not a little bit overwhelming, because, you know, that scene right there was pretty harsh with like Squirtle gnawing down on Charmander.
It's screaming bloody murder while it was happening.
Mm-hmm. At that point, if I'm the Pokemon trainer, I'm literally just like, Charizard or Charmander, return. I'm like, well, that sucked. What else do we got?
The Western publication of Shonen Jump in the mid-2000s, the premier source for shonen manga in Japan and the source of the vast majority of shows that 4Kids adapted, published the content mostly uncensored. So you could easily pick up an issue of Shonen Jump and see how series like One Piece, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Shaman King were supposed to be experienced instead of the downgraded anime adaptation airing on the weekends or after school. Considering fan subs began to proliferate via file-sharing services at the same time that were entirely free and available on demand and were preserved exactly as intended, you had a hobby that was now easily accessible, that provided an objectively superior experience at zero cost. The kids who grew up on 4Kids were getting older, and this new avenue for experiencing anime meant that the medium could grow up with them. As the internet continued to expand and become more easily accessible, the market for primetime corporate adaptations continued to dwindle and die. A final death rattle for 4Kids as it fell into its censored grave. In conclusion, it was poor corporate leadership and bad business decisions that led to the downfall of 4Kids.
You know what my truck is really lacking? Leadership.
I mean, yeah.
On, rocking the boat with the owners of Yu-Gi-Oh!, expanding operations on pointless ventures, and all of this during one of the worst financial crises in world history. On top of that, the internet was eroding away at television and was becoming a much more ideal place for anime fans to get their shows unaltered. Now, it is easy to throw 4Kids under the bus and ridicule it for its butchering of anime series, whether it was dumbing it down for younger audiences or censoring said content and replacing Japanese concepts in order to make the material more palatable to American sensibilities. Like, I can understand 4Kids censoring beer and cigarettes, but changing guns to fingers? Oh, come on. That looks a bit silly and kind of ruins the tension of the scene. Though it needs to be said that part of the censorship thing with 4Kids might have just been the company following orders from the television networks. That they, the networks, give orders to the production companies, such as 4Kids, when it comes to changing certain things for the network's audience. Eric Stewart, the voice of Brock in the 4Kids dub of Pokemon, and Kaiba for its Yu-Gi-Oh! Dub, is on record saying that a sweeping amount of networks and companies involved in the import of anime from Japan were in favor of Americanization.
Yeah, there's
such as changing
Veronica.
rice
Veronica
balls
Taylor. I had a chat with her. She was actually really cool.
donuts, which was the case for the dubs even outside of America. Even the Japanese companies wanted this because they thought it would give their shows more worldwide appeal.
So we wanted to make Pokemon a universal show for whatever country you were in. And more people could relate to donuts than sushi worldwide. So that's what we did. We didn't change the animation, but we changed that. That was so that it would then be distributed all over. So in Germany, things like that, they referenced it as a donut and not a Japanese food product.
Regardless of who was guilty for making the changes, looking back on the business model of 4Kids now, the average anime fan who did not grow up with the company's shows on TV are probably horrified, since nowadays even some slight localization and subtitles is met with heavy backlash from the hardcore anime faithful. But at the time of 4Kids, this was just par for the course for adapting Japanese entertainment. 4Kids was hardly the first company, and anime was far from the first export from Japan to suffer this fate. Only a few years before, Saban Entertainment would basically do the exact same thing with tokusatsu series such as Super Sentai,
Yes.
Kamen Rider, Metal Hero, and B-Fighter, localizing them to Power Rangers, Mask Ride, VR Troopers, and Beetleborgs, respectively. These shows would use the fight scenes from those shows while replacing the entire story sections with new footage shot with American actors, while also reducing the language and violence, and generally writing for a younger crowd. Tokusatsu is already aimed at a younger demographic than most anime. So the changes Saban had to make were not as
reveal
severe,
that was-
and tokusatsu in general
reveal
isn't
that it
nearly
was
as popular in
Jason.
the West as anime. Thus, these adaptations were far less controversial. The 70s and 80s similarly localized and
Rest in peace, Jason David Frank.
You know one thing that always bothered me, by the way?
What's that?
It's like, it's morphin' time, and then it puts like the suit on you and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not really that much of a morph if you can just take the helmet off after that separately, is it?
Well, that's the thing, is like, in, like, whenever it comes to, like, certain scenes, they actually don't have, like, the clips or anything like that to take the helmet off. Instead, they just, like, it's like, and the helmets are off. Basically, that's a camera trick. They basically shoot it, and basically it's like just them lifting the helmet above their head, like that, and then basically it's
I'm
like...
just saying from a lore perspective, it doesn't make sense to me that you should be able to take that helmet off when it took a magical thingy to put it on you in the first place.
Well, I don't know. It's
It was
Sentai
funny
stuff.
that I still remember from my kid. Like, I have such a bad memory, but I'll still remember. It's morphin' time!
Yeah. White tiger!
T-Rex! Like, Tyrannosaurus, or whatever.
Oh my god. Oh my god, is it really... Are you... Okay, fuck it. You know what? 1 second. I shall return.
Hurry.
I can't believe it, dude.
I have to pee.
I'm sorry, Nick. It take just a second. I apologize. Y'all sons of bitches. Oh my god.
That's not what I was hoping you were going to get.
Well, what do you think I was going to get?
Thought you had morphers or something.
I think I do in there, but just seeing Saba there, I had to go grab him. Yep. God. Yeah, it's been... Basically, his mouth still moves and everything, too, which I think is pretty cool. But, yeah. God, dude. This makes me feel old.
In the video.
Okay. I can't end the video, damn it.
I know, yeah, I mean, like, hit the play button.
Okay.
I have to go pee soon.
adapted
Give me
anime,
Saba
with
back.
series such as Star Blazers and Robotech getting heavily edited from their source materials. Space Battleship Yamato and Lacrosse to the point where they were
Dude,
basically
the
entirely
corrosion.
shows merely using the same art assets. Even 4Kids contemporaries at the time, like Toonami,
God.
still heavily edited the content they aired. Gundam Wing was censored to remove graphic violence and language, only airing uncut during the block's late-night program, The Midnight Run. Dragon Ball was similarly censored, removing blood and language, adding lots of jokes to soften the story, and even as going as far as changing Hell to HFIL,
The home-
or as it's called,
the Home for Infinite Losers.
Outlaw Star had an entire episode removed where the crew went to a hot spring because it had too much nudity to censor. And somehow Tenchi Muo, a harem series, was cut down to be an action series with romance only as a subplot. The point I'm trying to make, for as much flack as 4Kids gets nowadays, which they arguably deserve, up until the internet really took off and fan subs were able to be easily distributed, this was how most anime was consumed in America, outside of niche publishers releasing limited runs on VHS. Despite airing on TV in a censored format as Yu Yu Hakusho, you could go to your local Blockbuster and find OVAs for rent of the same property uncensored, instead titled as Poltergeist Files. And
Yes.
there's also lots of other series that got direct-to-video releases from early anime heavyweights like ADV Films and Manga Entertainment. But even releases from said companies were almost always dubbed. Getting your hands on properly subtitled anime outside of bootleg fan subs distributed at conventions was almost non-existent
Gunsmith
before
Cats,
file
wow.
sharing showed the public what they were missing. All in all, 4Kids made some dumb, boneheaded decisions that are laughable
Neon
to
Genesis
anime fans
Evangelion.
nowadays. But it can legit be argued that anime would not be where it is today if it wasn't for 4Kids being the first to distribute
Imagine
shows
if
to
4
audiences
Kids had
across
have
the
made a
world.
deal with the Japanese distribution companies to get a hold of just pure Japanese versions that they could add subtitles to, and they ran a late night block with completely uncensored Yu-Gi-Oh with the subs.
That'd be something.
I know as a kid, I would have fucking, like, they probably didn't do that because of this reason, but as a kid, I would have fucking stayed up late to watch that shit.
Well, dude, I stayed up late to watch the
I'd be
Midnight
like,
Run.
gotta see what the differences are, you know?
Yeah, I stayed up late to watch the Midnight Run of like Toonami and saw Gundam Wing Uncensored.
Yeah, I stayed
that
up
was-
late to watch Adult Swim whenever it started to be a thing.
Yeah, Cowboy Bebop there like changed everything for me.
World. Were they weird and butchered content and sometimes downright stupid? Oh, absolutely. But said shows lit a fire in these viewers to want more, and 4Kids Corpse paved the way for future fans of anime. Wait, corpse? Oh, no, we have to censor that. Yeah, let's just make it
Jelly-filled donut.
perfect.
It's not China. You can get away with saying corpse.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He is a lion.
A lion. Okay. Well, okay.
Now I want to go watch anime, but I don't have time to watch anime because I also want to go play a game that I need to do a bunch of stuff on while I still have time.
Yeah. I was looking at this, dude. Look at the corrosion on the friggin' battery in there.
Dude, that's not good.
I know it's
I need to
not.
get rid of that shit.
I know. I need to throw that away. Which, there's a screwdriver over there. I'll get it out of there. But anyway, everyone, thank you all so much for tuning into this. I'm not going to do much of an outro here because we spoke a lot during this.
Request cotton pache for kids
Yes.
in old anime blocks.
Thank you all very much.
Things are better now, but things are not as easy anymore.
No. So, either way, that's going to do it. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Till next time, I'm Nate.
I'm Nick.
Be good people. Take care. Peace.